Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the city of Verde Beach. And today, I'm excited. First of all, we're getting this excellent tour of Keller House right into the downtown area, which I think is really exciting. It's really starting to become an interesting place. So that's exciting to me. But I'm also excited because we are going to focus a little bit on infill development. And we are going to focus on street naming and district naming, and then finally a little bit of detailing. But before we get to all of that, we are going to make a couple of corrections to the previous video with the bike network, just brief ones, after we arrive at our final destination. This is just, it's really starting to feel like a big city, and the views are really striking at this point. I'm pretty impressed with the way that it's turning out. So I'm I think it's good to take an inventory and look at things at the street level from time to time, because it's really tempting to just look at things from 30,000 feet. So there we are. We have arrived at our destination. So let's get to our bike network. And there were a number of comments that pointed out how illogical my bike ramp was that crossed from this neighborhood over here over to our in the district. So let's focus on making this a little bit more rational. And I don't know what happened, but I just couldn't see the change. I'm going to pause this for a second because I'm going to totally reconfigure these bridges. So the problem is I decided to have this big looping bridge that really didn't need to do all of that. And you can tell when you look here, and you'll see that the terrain height is almost identical to that bridge height. So the much more logical choice would have been to just build that bridge directly across. So let's do that right now. Ooh, that is way too high. Let's try that again. Okay, a little bit of insight into what I did here. So I wanted to make sure, well, first of all, let's make sure that we have ramps everywhere for bikes. Okay, so my primary consideration here was that I wanted to continue to have this be a fairly simple connection. And I think that I've accomplished that now. I had to do a lot of reconstruction there, so we'll call that a mulligan because that's significant. So now we have a nice sloping approach here, a nice direct connection across, and I think this is going to work really well. Now, one of the things that was mentioned is that there really aren't any pedestrian connections across between these neighborhoods. So I think there is some logic. I know that I just converted this to be a bike path, but knowing that bikes can also use the general paths, I think there is some logic in converting this to just be a normal path. I just want to make sure that bikers are going to still use this as a preferred method for getting across. Let's speed this up for a second. Okay, and I do see the bikers using it. This is kind of a weird thing. I know that often bikers want to be completely separated from pedestrian traffic when they can be, but this is a very significant crossing to get across here. So I do really think that that was a good idea that was left in the comments. So one of the other things that was mentioned is that I did not make a connection to this bridge up to the highway, and it was really kind of a missed connection. And I think that this guy would agree. We want to see that Buccaneer, whoa, be able to get down here as well. So what I think I'm going to do, first of all, this tree is insane. We'll get rid of that. We're going to make a bridge down to this path. It probably should be bi-directional, but we're not going to do that. We'll just have a 90 here, and people can come up and get to where they need to go. So that's a nice opportunity. I think I do want to convert that so it is, we'll use the university. Well, no, I don't want pedestrians to walk down here. So we will use the bike path tool there. So now there's an opportunity, at least if you're a biker, to get onto what really is the bike highway in this area. Lastly, this was pointed out to me in the comments. Whoa. That's not the greatest place to park. At least they got back up. One of the things that was mentioned in the comments is that there are a number of bikers on the sidewalks over here. And one of the reasons for that is that they have to cross the road if they are coming from the college campus area and trying to get onto the bike highway. So that was not my intention. That was a missed connection. And just like a highway, I don't have a ramp to get onto this network. So the only way that someone from over here could head towards downtown would be to either go in the bike lanes and cross here to get across, or to go on the sidewalk and do the same thing down here. So that was not my intention. So what we are going to do, we will grab the bike network, or the bike path, and we will turn off our road guidelines. What we're going to do is just kind of mirror this connection, but we're going to do it on flat ground. And actually, I think I'm overthinking this. We're not going to mirror it. We will turn our road guidelines on. Sometimes all of this landscaping does get in the way. This is one of those times, so I will eliminate some of it. I want to have a little stub here so that I can use my road guides. And what I will do is turn that back on, use that little stub road as my guide, and make a nice clean connection. So that's what I was hoping for. So now, presumably, someone on the sidewalk could come all the way down if they wanted and get onto this trail area. So that's going to make me change a little bit what I was considering here. So I had bike paths that kind of terminated. I want to discourage that crossing movement. So truthfully, I don't think that these bike lanes at all add any value in this area. And this is kind of a weird situation where, man, there are people using them though. So I'm considering game mechanics as well as reality. In reality, I don't know that. I mean, this would probably extend all the way to the path, and we'd have ramps there, a curb cut, and people could get onto that trail. That's not the way the game's gonna use it. I don't want this crossing movement, but I don't want to discourage people from using it. So I might actually just extend this bike path all the way down into the roundabout, even though I know that that's, you know, a pretty nonsense move. See, this is good. Well, no, it's not. So it'll prevent that mid-block crossing and still give people the option to use the bike paths if they're coming off the trail here. It'll take a little bit of time to work itself out. So let's speed this up to make sure it works. Okay, one thing that's interesting is I see that people are still able to cross mid-block, and they're still able to leave the bike lane and just cut up the curb, which is fine. I mean, that still shows me that there's value in having this bike lane here. I just didn't realize that that was a way that this would function. So, interesting thing to know, and it's good that we've extended this all the way down to the roundabout. So, I think that it's going to work out all right. So the area that I want to work on some infill development is right here. And part of the reason I want that is, well, twofold. One, if you look, we're starting to run out of land to build on. We have this, but I am really reluctant to build out a lot of right here until we get our airport built, which will be right about here. So I want to focus on residential development, maybe some density, because I really want to hit our next milestone for our population, which is going to be 70,000. 70,000 is going to allow me to unlock some of our airport assets that really matter a lot to me. So I want the cargo airport hub, and I want the international airport. Now, the metropolitan airport is another option, and honestly, that's probably the one I'll take. I want to be able to access those assets, and I just can't do it at 60,000. So part of it's going to be just building up population. The other thing is going to be we're going to look at the Hamilton Hills farm And think about the development pressure that this would start to face with all of this residential development occurring around it. And maybe at some point in time, we will redevelop this farm into a residential area. And the benefit to the Hamilton family will be that this land is going to be so valuable once we develop around here that they'll be able to buy twice the land out here someday and have an even better farm. So interestingly, the road network is already developed here though, and that will be the road network of a future residential area. So let's get moving on that one. Oh, one more thing I gotta fix. So I'm gonna call a mulligan on the orientation of this post-sorting facility, and we'll have that load onto Smith Street, which will also be renamed at some point in this episode today. And hopefully this helps to resolve some of the issues that we're having with our post office facility, because we still are having some traffic issues in this area. Again, not the end of the world if it's not stopping, but it is still a very, very heavy traffic flow right here. So something to keep an eye on, and I'm going to add more. So let's get moving on that. So what I'm thinking is this area, first of all, if we go back to our land value, this is going to be a very valuable area, a little bit of a confusing area because there's going to be a transition to industrial, but it's agricultural in nature. I don't think we're going to have a lot in the way of pollution, but let's take a look. There's some right here. So we will line what is now Clark Street with some commercial. We could also do offices if we wanted, but I'm not overly concerned about it. I think we're going to create a brand new street network in this area, change the orientation of the roads, and just show that this is a different place. Now, this neighborhood is fairly dense, so I'm going to keep this to be a fairly dense area too, but it's not going to be all that big. I think I want to use topography if there's any here. None. I will not use topography. I will use the existing roadway network as my guide. We'll break into that trail network and we will fix that later. So I wouldn't consider this the most exciting neighborhood, but I do think it will be one that is valuable to the city. All right, so we've got this is a node issue. So this isn't necessarily where I want to put the road, but I don't think it's going to let me put it anywhere else. Yeah, that is frustrating. One thing I might do, if I'm going to have a connection here, we have this dirt road, and I know that in the future this is going to be redeveloped. So I would at least want to have both of these intersections occurring at the same place. So I will create that junction now. And then we'll just upgrade that road on this side. Now I do want to pay attention to my junctions, particularly in this area. There's just a lot of traffic, and the last thing I want to do is forget about a junction and inadvertently cause a significant traffic backup in this area. The other thing I noticed is I don't have priority roads set onto this one-way couplet. I probably should, but because I want to keep traffic flowing through there, I'm just going to add stop signs through here. Okay, so this I think will help with some of the traffic issues. We have pedestrian traffic, which I guess is a good problem to have, but we still have it. So that's what's causing some of the delays in this area. And there's not really, I don't think there's going to be a good way for me to fix that, short of doing some really hokey stuff, like adding a highway connection right here. We're not going to do that. We're just going to deal with some of the delay, and these trucks will have to be patient. All right, so we have this new neighborhood. It's not very significant in terms of size. This neighborhood, I do want to create a district for it. Before I forget, let's add these path connections. Actually, before I complete those connections, let's make sure that we are having those connections at a crossing. I think that would be important. So that is much better. Now, one of the reasons I want this to be a new district, I thought about just extending this district down here, but this is being developed, 20, 30 years after the Lewis Garden City. And it's not part of the Garden City. This is likely what would have been farmland that's being redeveloped, named after someone else. I see Cook Street in here, and I used to live on a Cook Street, and that makes me want to name this Congress Park. So this will be Congress Park. I did not get that from the naming list. I'm going to be pulling from there quite a bit. But this one is one for me. So I'll take that one. Okay, so I'm going to have commercial uses. So first of all, let's take a look at our sound pollution, because this is something I'm thinking about. So we have a lot of sound pollution on either side of this new neighborhood. So the only way that we are going to be able to, make this kind of a hospitable place to live is going to be to buffer some of that noise. So I'm thinking to one way to make this district feel entirely different than the Lewis Garden City would be to actually zone along this collector here. And now we have a nice separation in between all of these very loud uses and this residential neighborhood. And we're going to just uniformly zone this whole thing. This land would be very expensive due to its proximity to existing developments. You can imagine the developer would try to get as dense a neighborhood as they could through here. I'm not going to zone these because these are on the other side. These are within the Lewis Garden City, and I do not want to encroach upon that area, zone things that weren't already zoned. I am going to pause this for a brief second because I realize that I missed a path connection through here. We're not going to extend the road through here, so we should extend the path connection through and make another opportunity to connect up with this path right here. And we have a connection. It's a little offset, but it's not that bad. So interestingly, I find myself making another bike connection through here inadvertently. So we'll see if that actually becomes a thing, but you could see it happening. Okay, so this neighborhood, not going to be all that exciting. There's not really any services in this area. We're just kind of depending on the services that are already here. Let's just see. It probably could use a police station. Maybe I can't just completely ignore this. Let's add a police station. Ooh, this whole area is a fire hazard, interestingly. So let's add a fire department as well. That's a terrible spot. So I think the best place for this would be within that commercial area. So we're going to call a mulligan, use a little bit of eminent domain, and place it right here. Let's look at our education. Again, no education in this area. We do have really good capacity, so I'm going to say that this is relying on bus service to get to those schools. Bus service that we don't have built. So we are going to focus on transit soon, but not right now. So it'll just be a little bit of a walk for the time being, but we do need water. So let's put the water pipes under the road where they belong. The nice thing is you see we have stubs here already. So it's just kind of making connections to our existing water network, which isn't that big of a deal. Okay, now we can go back to it. Things are going to remedy themselves here. We're going to be fine. So this is an interesting area back here. There's a lot of space because we have our radio towers here. Nothing's really going to happen. So I'm probably going to have some landscaping here when we detail a little bit, but I'm going to worry about that a little bit later. We could continue developing on the other side of the road, and I think I am going to extend this neighborhood across just a little bit. So I realize I did not set a theme over here, and I think I'm not going to, because I want this to feel entirely different. Like I mentioned, develop 20 years into the future. Just make sure our district. So I'm going to take a chunk out of that old districts, just so we get the new development patterns. So I started seeing some of those European suburbia style buildings starting to pop up here. And I don't want it to feel at all like it's part of this area. When you look at the other buildings that we're getting, I mean, these are just very traditional American style, I guess, large homes. Some duplexes. It's kind of look like, interestingly, these kind of look like the European suburbia buildings. So they've got that hedgerow. Well, it's fine. They are going to look different, and you can see it already. The other thing that we could have done is we could have made this, maybe I'll do that on the other side, just so that these feel like different neighborhoods. Have some of the self-sufficient buildings, thinking that this neighborhood would be kind of an eco neighborhood with a focus on the sustainable farming. So I could see that being kind of part of the shtick that a developer could bring in. We're going to make this neighborhood that's totally based on being self-sufficient. All the homes are going to be self-sufficient, and knowing full well that the presence of the neighborhood will cause significant disruptions in the ability for the farm to exist in the future. So, if we're just being completely reasonable and realistic. So we have this kind of 20 by 10 grid over here by the farm that deviates a bit. I think that we are going to continue that for this neighborhood. And you're going to see that the road network really starts to break down over here. There's not a lot that we can do to maintain the road network. So we're just going to do whatever we can to make a new one. And then mirror kind of what we already have over here. I do want to set that back a full 10 units. Now the thought process there is I want to have some trees as a sound buffer, and I want to preserve right away for future expansion of this roadway, because we might have something in the works. So this is where I'm going to get a little bit OCD and crazy and keep working at this until it's absolutely perfect. So, not at all necessary, but it makes me feel better about it, so I'm going to keep doing it. That's not absolutely perfect. This is where a little piece of me really misses Move It. But it's just a little piece. It's not that big of a deal. So I wanted to convert this road so that when I make this connection, which I'm going to do, I still have a roadway or a trail crossing. So that's kind of a vanilla compensation right there for some shortcomings of the base game. Not a big deal. Looks a little funky, but it's all right. Nice, smooth connection into there. And I would think because we're not going to make all of these connections, we could kind of emulate some of those forms of the roadway network, kind of mimic and mirror those. Interestingly, I'm really struggling to mirror that. I think part of it's where the node connects, so takes a little bit of motivation, but it's certainly possible. So you might wonder why I don't just make all of these connections through, and part of it is I don't think that the neighborhood would allow it to happen. So I've dealt with this where you have a new neighborhood being constructed, and the old neighborhood, even though they know that, or knew that there was a potential or possibility of a neighborhood being platted, when those potential plans become real plans, they fight back. And if they get the idea or the ear of the right politician, they can defeat the roadway connections. It's happened. It's very painful for a planner to concede those sorts of fights, knowing full well what comes next. And what comes next is complaints that the roadway network is disjointed, that things aren't working appropriately. But that's what people ask for. In fact, in one case that I had, there's actually this neighborhood that was platted with alleys behind it, and they fought the new neighborhood connecting in the alleys, which is kind of a bizarre thought. Even it wouldn't be something as a homeowner that I would ever think to contest, but a new developer came in. It had been 20 years since the neighborhood was developed. They were used to their one-sided alley, and that's what they wanted to keep it as. So they fought and fought and fought, and now all of the homes that were supposed to be rear-loaded are now front-loaded. Lots and lots of driveways, which pains me. And that's the situation that developed. It happens. But I think that this right here, they have a sleepy street. Jennifer Street is as sleepy as they come. All the parking is just for them. They get to get onto their bike network or path network and go for a bike ride or a quick walk. And they would not want cars coming through their neighborhood. They would say things like, "That is not what I bought into." So they would be the biggest determinant of how this would happen. And it wouldn't happen is what would happen. So maybe targeted connections would be the compromise. So I was able to make this connection to Martin Street. And I think that we're even going to change the name. I was going to pull this through. I think I'm going to pull Martin to Ward Street. We're going to rename all these anyway, except for Martin. That's within a developed area. And I think you might see odes to these being platted together, like maybe this would also be Jennifer Street. West Jennifer Street. So not a great solution. Ooh, Phillip Street. We will extend that all the way through. Fix Brown Street there. Great name for a street anyway, so we absolutely should carry that through. All right. And now let's get our water network in this area before we start zoning. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to think about a little bit is, cities don't come to own land like this just randomly. This would be dedicated to them. So I would imagine that whoever's developing this neighborhood would absolutely ask for some sort of direct, like these trail connections. They might ask for more of them, or pony up the cash and build them before dedicating this outlot to the city. So something interesting to think about. We need to clean up this district. We have part of it within the old area, so we're going to be very careful as we draw these boundaries. Okay, so we have Cedar Square, which, truthfully, is a good name, but I do want to start thinking about some of the neighborhoods names that have been given to me in the comments. So for this one, I'm going to use Verde Palms. And I do want to set a district specialization here. So we're going to have organic and local here. And we are going to have the self-sufficient buildings. Now, I set organic and local because I think a neat transition between these areas, and actually let's extend this district down a little ways, would be kind of a farm to table model. So what we're going to do is extend this district down just ever so slightly. And right on this border here, we're going to have some commercial. Let's be a little bit more selective with what we're doing. Got to tell myself that sometimes. I want this to feel like it's part of this new neighborhood, not kind of randomly in here. So we will have offices again along this street. So Oak Street, and then we're going to have some of these organic and local buildings along the farm district, with the idea being that this would be an area that's kind of like a farmer's market. All right. So that's going to be great. That'll act as a main street, and it will also act as a place for, regionally, people to get fresh food. So now we've got this area over here, this neighborhood, and I do want to space the houses out a little bit here. So we're going to do that. So I'm noticing an opportunity for a trail connection. So we're going to add that right here. And you can tell I'm just really trying to make sure that there are space between these homes, thinking that this neighborhood is being marketed as an upscale neighborhood. And we lost the name. In an episode where we're going to talk about naming a whole bunch, that's the last thing we can do. And throughout the rest of this neighborhood, 100% residential. This is suburban in character. Everyone deserves a small little node where they can get some groceries. I firmly believe that. So we should implement that here. So the smallest I'm going with any district is 2x2. I want larger form factor homes here if possible. And even though the lots in like a 3x2 or 2x4 are kind of funky, because we're leaving all this space, it kind of makes it feel like the lots are bigger. Knowing that we don't have parcels in this game, we just kind of have zoning blocks. This is kind of one of the things I do to compensate for that lack of parcels. Okay, there we go. This will fill in and be a really interesting part of the city, in my estimation. We probably had some opportunities here to make path connections that we're about to lose. So before we lose those in their entirety, I am going to make a connection through. And we'll use a little bit of eminent domain because the planner was a bonehead and did not make the connection. This would not happen. But everyone knows I love to demolish things. So might as well right here as well. Truthfully, these are kind of funky parcels. So maybe I'll just leave those and use that as an opportunity for some landscaping. Okay, I think we're in a good spot. We're going to let this go because right now I want to start thinking about all of the naming we have to do. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of streets. So we're going to do this fairly quickly. And we will start right at the coast. So we have Ocean Avenue. Following cars. So we'll start here. And I'll just kind of go block by block. My first choice will be to maintain any streets that we have. And the second choice will be to pull from my naming list. Okay. There's actually one thing I forgot to do. And that is, one of the things that was suggested is within this area that has all of these larger buildings, it would make a lot of sense to have an IT cluster district. So I think the central, if I recall correctly, yeah, this is an IT cluster district. So I kind of want to extend that across the road just ever so slightly in a new district, just so we start to get some increased height in this area. Let's make sure that our zoning, yeah, we have some zoning in this area that would support that. Now that I look back, there's not a lot of office in this area. So I might just add that district policy to Beach Park. Or rather, district specialization. So we will add that there, and then the little bit of office that we have here will redevelop into that IT cluster. And we'll get a little bit more height in this area, which is incredibly, incredibly beneficial. Okay, so interestingly, we don't have a district over here. So that's something that I think we're going to want to do. Let's start out, we'll rename Beach Park. So I'm going to extend Gombe over to Gombe Boulevard. That makes sense. This would kind of be the end of the university. And then this whole neighborhood with Fireman's Park will be one neighborhood. For this neighborhood, we are going to make this Sugar Hill. Okay. We have Concord Park over here. I kind of like that. We might leave that one. So I want to look at the... So I don't have any themes here. Nor do I have them here. I think I might switch this to Modern City Center, which is going to see lots of destruction, quite unfortunately, in this area. So let's speed through this and see how it changes. Okay, so things are kind of changing in this area slowly over time, but I like these assets a lot. I think that they're really charming and interesting to look at, and I want them in this area as a result. This is our city center, so having that here makes a ton of sense to me as a policy. So we've been going back and forth on actually doing what we're supposed to do. So let's get back to it. So Bass does go through. I kind of want to take inventory of what is connected. Rudolph Street goes through. That one's good. I think most everything else is going to be a problem. So, all right, we'll start down here. So I'm changing this, the end point of this street, because it's in the wrong spot. So we'll do something arbitrary here. We'll make this short street. That would never pass the naming standards. So adding a couple Native American street names in, which I like that suggestion when it was brought up. Continue that pattern here. Okay, so I think we have our first little bit done. The downtown area is good to go. One down, many to go. So Pawnee Street, City Hall, perfect. Okay, so now I think we have most of our streets named through here. So we're making good progress. You know, that's the thing about naming. It seems really daunting. I let this go for way too long, and I started thinking about what it was going to take to actually accomplish this. And for a while, I was like, oh boy, I can't even think about this. But it's not that bad. So I'm going to continue the Lee Street straight through. Someone suggested naming some of the roads after Greek gods, and I love that too. And I am going to let this one curve. There, I know that I mentioned the naming conventions we're going to use. We're not going to curve that much, but there's always a deviation, and this is going to be that one. So we have some desert namings now too. That's the thing. There's no trick to street naming. Developers are just picking names that remind them of things that matter, people that matter, and trying to make sure that the planners don't shut them down. So we're not going to get overly crazy about it. I've seen stuff that just kind of makes me shake my head. And, it's they're building the road. They're developing the neighborhood. Who am I to tell them no unless it's clear violation of the standards that have been established? So I like this. We had the fire station on Nuevo Fuego. So that's that's perfect. Okay, so we've got a couple more, I think, that we need to get to. This is kind of where it gets tricky because we're just making sure that we've got everything as it should be. So this is another curve where I think I'm going to let it live because there won't be two intersections of a road. So this would not be allowed by many street naming conventions because it has the name of a person as opposed to just Remy Street or Crowther Street, but we're going to do both. We're going to say that we let one slip through. The Chief Gonzalez Parkway is obviously named after a person too, but I feel like there are exceptions that are made, and that's certainly the type of exception that gets made. Electric Avenue going right into this stadium area, or this festival concert area. So I really like that. That's good. Okay, so I think we're pretty much named up in this area. Oh, Mac Street. That's tiny way. Okay, so I feel like we had 2 instances of Rudolph Street at some point, and someone told me about it, and I never fixed it. So as we're going through here, I'm just going to do a quick look, because I don't get to these. Here it is. It's short. It has a curve. All right, we will science way. That'll be a quick fix. Okay, so now as we move into here, we've got a whole bunch of things happening with the streets. I don't think that I have ever gone through this industrial area in any significant way and thought about street naming. So let's do that right now. So we have got some names of artists and songs through here, and it's going to be kind of an interesting juxtaposition between the reality that we actually see here. It'll be funny now. All right, so Penny Lane is an industrial road. This has to be Cargo Way, though, because that's what is causing all these problems. So I just want to go through these roads and make sure that they are ending where they should. You start to see the length of some of these roads now. Gombe goes all the way from the Lewis Garden City all the way into this new neighborhood that we just created. That's impressive. And that's one of the things that makes a city in City Skylines feel real in my mind, is having long roads. Because that's, sometimes you'll see these cities that are created that have just little short roads everywhere. And in reality, these roads are connected. They go places. Okay, so I am going to keep Cook Street because sentimental reasons for me. And then we will start with some other street names as well. So Thunder doesn't make a direct connection over here, but we're going to pretend that it does. And this will be West Thunder. And I think we're going to allow this to... No, we're not. We can't do that. We'll have it stop at Oak. And here we will change the name. Okay, added a couple Hamilton references in here. All right. And one of the reasons that I am doing that is I'm actually near the end of all of the names that you guys have given me. So that is certainly a limiting factor. And it might not necessarily be that you guys didn't submit enough to me. It might just be that I have reached the end of the list that I was able to pull together. So I do think that as far as naming goes, we might leave it here for now. Except for this. I hate this name. But I also still have a couple of district names that I can pull from. Make this historical because this is the candy shop in 50s district. All right. Perfect. And this is hopping now. I'm liking this. This is looking awesome. Our population has gone up, not as much as I was really hoping it would. I didn't expect it to with this level of residential improvement, but it's worth hoping, I guess. I didn't think it would, but I hoped it would. All right, so with that, we're down to the last couple of tasks that I want to approach today. So I'm going to slow this down because we're not really getting any benefit anymore. We're just kind of spending money and making money from time to time, but mostly just killing time. And it's already 2078, so it's making me uncomfortable because it's getting to the point where I would be a very old man at this point. And we've got issues that are starting to come up that we're going to need to put down soon. And I don't want to get in a situation where I spend so much time doing all of this stuff that the city melts down. And I think we're rapidly approaching that area. That said, we need street names for Myrtle Park. And we need street names for this still struggling industrial area over here. The only thing I can think of at this point to make this area work would be the Industry 4.0 policy, which I'm absolutely not going to implement over here. I promise. So let's do a little bit of landscaping though. We should close this out with some detailing, making this city feel a little bit more real, particularly in this area and over here as well. Okay, I want to be really careful along the highway. We did not put up sound walls, so I do think having some sort of buffer is incredibly important here. People mentioned that this looks sad, so I think I'm going to jazz it up. I don't think that helped. That looks terrible, but... Or it looks... Maybe it's not terrible. Let's look at street level. That'd be fine. I'd like to see that. But from above, it looks pretty weird. So, that's why it's important to come here to ground level, where if you were leaving your house, you'd absolutely want to see a whole bunch of flowering plants in your little cul-de-sac. Especially if it hides all those smokestacks back there. Not pretty. So you'll take what you can get in that particular instance. So I do think that adding that bit of landscaping, I mean, there's a lot of really ugly things happening in this area. And there's no need for a sound wall here. It's never going to be placed because the homes are set too far back and it's an affordable neighborhood. And so, you know, even if this were a very wealthy neighborhood, I think after the fact, trying to get these sound walls would be next to impossible. So we have the trees. They will do the trick. So I think that looks a lot nicer. So now we have Verde palms with no palm trees. So let's load this area up with palm trees because everything about this area was shtick. So in this neighborhood, because I have this space, I could kind of come through and add these trees all the way through, but truthfully, without the prop line tool, I'm not super excited about that, and I'm not even the kind of builder, I guess, that gets excited about doing all of that kind of thing. It's interesting, but I like building. You know, that's the thing about planning. As a planner, we are a big picture profession, so the details matter. I certainly look at site plans, you know, particularly for big developments, but you look at an individual house, I make sure that the setbacks are right, that they're not building in a place where we probably should have a sidewalk, and that the building is not higher than it's supposed to be, or, you know, whatnot. But beyond that, once we help design the neighborhood and make sure everything's up to standards, we're done. So it's developing that set of criteria. So it's really important when you have like either a general development plan that guides the design of a neighborhood, or you're redoing the zoning code, or you're just applying the zoning code, that you're really thinking through everything up front, because you can really mess things up. So one of the nice things about separating those buildings is you start to see that you get more trees in between the homes, and that's a way to compensate for how brown the Green Cities, ironically, DLC is, because that's a problem in my personal opinion with the DLCs. It's just self-sufficient buildings. I guess that means everything's brown. So they are attractive buildings otherwise, and I like the green roofs. And I agree that in certain climates, this would actually be sustainable. I love the architecture of the building, the visual interest in each of these designs is through the roof, but just not in Verde Beach, which is a nice tropical place. So, oh yeah, there we are. We haven't had one today, at least that I've seen. And we have services here, although we are a long ways away from any of these. Is he coming over here? Or is she coming over here? Lost it. Oh, there it is. Oh, no, that's a bird. So I should give up. So hopefully I didn't just add enough. Oh boy. All right, well, I might have made a small mistake. I was really getting into the tree planting. I feel like I hit my rhythm and I was in my zone, and I'm getting penalized for it. It's, I'll take it. No. I thought I had this. Okay. It solidifies it for me. We've got to do something about this. We've got to add some fire breaks. We've got to add some roads through here that don't really go anywhere, but allow fire access. Something to make all these crazy fire stop, because it is, I agree, it's funny, but I would like to be able to build without everything burning down. And I'm not going to do what keeps being suggested, which is turn off fire spreading. It's just not, I think it's an interesting game mechanic. I think it happens far too often. Once every, 10 years. Okay, I get it. But it happens all the time. And it kills me that it really happens where you've planted trees. Like this area over here, where I didn't plant the trees, doesn't really happen. But these areas where I plant the trees, it absolutely happens. It happens nonstop. So that bugs me a little bit. Not enough to stop planting trees though. So just to show them who's boss, the arsonists are no match for me. These are a lot smaller than I was expecting when you're that high up. Okay, so I wanted to add, because this area is not going to be developed, I did kind of want to make it seem like there's a purpose that it's not being developed, and that is we've got this tower out here. We'll add some sort of access to it, and then it's a forested area. The neat thing is we now have a way to access it if we really want to, for whatever reason. And I'm really regretting adding all of these. Okay, at least it's not on the trails now. I think I'm going to leave it here. I wanted to get to the roundabout. I don't think that's going to happen. In terms of time, that is a signal. Oh, we've had some other burns. So I thought we made it through today without burns. It's just not going to happen. We're going to try to do something in the future to mitigate some of this, but there's always going to be some. All right, so I think we're going to leave it here. You know what? This wasn't bad. Look at this. The fire stopped. Maybe I need to calm down, because this is basically best case scenario. No buildings were destroyed. Wow, this might be the very first fire where the campground survived. And over here with our new fire. Wow. You know what? We're going to let this... The irony. Well, we're going to let this go because everything's okay. Everything is okay. I really feel bad that Fireman's Park burned down now. That's... I wish I would have seen this happen. That's the way things happen sometimes, especially here in Verde Beach. Well, with that, I think we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you've enjoyed this build. If you did, please consider hitting the like button, consider subscribing to my channel, and consider hitting that notification bell. If you want to talk with me at any point, please consider hopping in the Discord server. I'm in there pretty much every day, and we've got a great community, and we'd love to have you become a part of it. I also want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters. I appreciate the heck out of your support, and it means a lot to me. I also want to leave you guys with a brief city tour, so stick around for that. Thank you. Bye-bye.